These are all the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in It, Welcome to Derry, Episode 6, In the Name of the Father. Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush, I'm Colton Ogburn, and It, Welcome to Derry promised from the outset that it would expand the lore of It and Derry by exploring details and stories that had only been hinted at in the previous films. And that is exactly what we got in this episode, with it finally being revealed how Pennywise the Dancing Clown came to be. So, we open with 1935 Derry, the same cycle that ended with the Bradley Gang Massacre, and this was the prior cycle to the one that we've been exploring this season. So, we're at Juniper Hill Asylum, where young Mrs. Kersh, aka Ingrid Gray, is working as a young nurse. Ingrid is taking this young girl, Mabel, a patient at Juniper Hill Asylum, down to the basement to meet Pennywise. Now, at first, I thought we were about to learn that Ingrid was basically feeding kids to it. That's not what she was doing in this scene, but that is what she totally starts doing later. So I know this scene doesn't play out in full until a little later in the episode, but let's just go ahead and break it down because it is so cool getting to see Ingrid, aka Mrs. Kersh, the daughter of Bob Gray, meeting for the first time, or at least I think, this reincarnated version of her father. So, before taking Mabel down to the basement, we learn that Ingrid had overheard Mabel telling her doctor about a clown who told her to meet him in the basement that night. The doctor, of course, assumes this kid is just crazy or exhibiting signs of an overactive imagination, and he brushes it off. But not Ingrid. When she overhears mention of a clown, she is reminded of her father, Bob Gray. In 1908, the same year that General Shaw and his father came to Derry, as did the circus performer Bob Gray and his daughter Ingrid. We even saw their circus and young Ingrid in her clown costume in this flashback scene from a previous episode. Now, Bob Gray was also known as Pennywise the Dancing Clown. That was his act at the circus. A little later, we even see photos of him in his Pennywise getup, and Jesus, it's just as terrifying. It's just as terrifying. It didn't really have to make many modifications at all. So as we'll learn a little later, Bob fell prey to the entity of it during that cycle, and now, 27 years later, young Ingrid, who knew that her father's death or disappearance wasn't normal, hears mention of a clown, and of course she becomes curious. So she takes young Mabel down below that night, and I have to say, this boiler room basement totally gave me some Freddy Krueger Nightmare on Elm Street vibes. So Ingrid and Mabel arrive in the basement, where they see a red balloon floating, the same red balloon that Ingrid used to hold as a young clown. The balloon floats to a doorway where a tall-ass Pennywise steps into frame. Now, you'll notice this entire scene is shot in black and white, that is, except for the colors of red and yellow. Red and yellow have been a recurring color scheme throughout this entire series, popping up prominently in almost every scene. In this instance, we see, of course, the red balloon and later the red blood of Mabel, but we're also seeing its yellow eyes. Throughout the season, and even in the opening credits, we see its yellow eyes pretty often. This is meant to connect to its truest form lying beneath those eyes, the deadlights, which take on the same warm yellow color. Now, as Pennywise approaches Mabel, he is nice and welcoming, just like in It Chapter 1 with Georgie, or in this scene in It Chapter 2 with the young girl he killed under the bleachers. Now, there seems to be something that it enjoys about ever so slightly befriending its prey and toying with them and making them nervous before going full-on scary monster and eating them. My assumption would be is that just like how fear makes its prey tastier, as Will explained here,
your adrenal gland secretes them into your bloodstream, which some predators like the taste of.
It would also appear that the nervousness and heightened tensions that its prey feel as they're unsure on whether or not to trust the clown, that creates an even more tasty piece of meat, nervousness and uncertainty being key drivers of fear. So it is delighted that Mabel has finally come to see him and that she brought a friend. And then we get Ingrid calling him Papa, and this look on its face when it realizes, oh shit, I know this girl. She's the daughter of my favorite form, Pennywise. And side note, I have to say that it is sad that probably almost every child at this asylum isn't actually crazy. They've just been tortured by it, making this asylum essentially a feeding ground for the entity. Anyway, it looks up at Ingrid drooling, just like we've seen it do many times before. But when it realizes who Ingrid is, we see that stupid ass smile drop and then quickly return as it begins to realize that it might be able to manipulate her into bringing more children for it to feast on. It then goes full Monster Teeth mode and begins to chase them, doing its signature run like here in Bill's basement. So Ingrid, for some reason, lets go of that baby's hand, I guess, to open this door. Mabel falls and the door closes between them. It eats Mabel, and then we get the return of Bob Gray.
Pumpkin, it's me.
Now, you'll remember we have seen Bill Skarsgård, who plays Pennywise, play Bob Gray in It Chapter 2.
If you don't believe, awesome, let's see.
Now, we know that it is a shapeshifter, but that it can enter your mind and explore every corner, similar to the power of the shine that Dick Hallorann has. This ability is what allows it to not only take on the physical appearance of someone else, but it allows for it to essentially clone the mind and personality and mannerisms of anyone, making it to where it can give a very convincing performance. And that is how it was able to trick the kids into thinking it was Maddie in the previous episode. And that is how it has been able to so easily convince Ingrid that it is really her father, because it knows things that only her father should know. It has explored not only the mind of its prey, Bob Gray, but also Ingrid's mind, finding every happy moment that she holds most dearly about her father. It says to Ingrid,
Let me in.
and I think this is meant to be taken way more deeply than open the door and let me into the room, but open the door to your heart and your mind and let me in. This show has already explored the shine with Hallorann and the doors in one's mind and how memories can be used to manipulate someone from within their mind, the same way that Hallorann did with Taniel in the previous episode. And yeah, I saw the comments. His name's Taniel, not Daniel. My f***ing bad. I don't have subtitles on my copy of the episode. Forgive me. So it sees in Ingrid not another meal, but the potential to serve it endless meals at a buffet called Juniper Hill. And as we learn a little later, that is exactly what she would go on to do, feed him children in order to see her father.
But every time that he would return, this shadow would steal my father away.
Now, this mention of a shadow refers to its hunger and the evil, fear-filled nature of it when preying on children. And Ingrid must have discovered that if she helped orchestrate bringing children to the basement for it to eat, in return, it would play daddy. And this has me wondering if it has actually developed any type of care or love or admiration, whatever you want to call it, for Ingrid. And I don't think so. I don't think it is capable of love. I think it is totally capable of pretending that it is capable of love. But I don't think that it would like genuinely care about Ingrid, at least not beyond the point at which she services him. But the previous episode did suggest that it was it that wrecked Hank's prison transport, freeing him from his trip to Shawshank and reuniting him with his girlfriend Ingrid. So maybe she asked it to do that for her, and maybe it was willing to do that so that she would continue to bring him children. Or the more likely answer is that it freed Hank to enrage the town. As we'll see throughout the episode, the race-based hatred for Hank has hate and unrest pulsating throughout the town of Derry, something that it feeds on, just like with the Bradley Gang Massacre, where the town came together in a violent nature and killed the Bradleys. We are seeing the town now come together to hunt down and kill Hank. So it needed Hank to stay in Derry, free from prison, to keep that hate campaign alive. All right, but I've gotten a little ahead of myself, I think, so let's dial it back and break down the entirety of the episode and then get into that brutally eerie ending that has set the stage for the infamous Black Spot Fire. So the previous episode ended with Hanlon accidentally shooting his partner Russo, who jumped in front of his gun as he was about to open fire on his son, Will, thinking that it was an illusion by it. Now Hanlon is tearing into Will for being down there in the first place.
You don't leave your room without my permission.
Will then hits below the belt and says,
I know not you, because I would never let my friends die.
And this hit below the belt results in a hit right upside the head.
Leroy!
Now, I get why Hanlon is mad. He killed his best friend, and that wouldn't have happened had Will stayed his ass at home. But this anger and uncalled for violence against his own son that we are seeing brew within Leroy Hanlon, that is giving us a glimpse at the meaner, colder Leroy that we meet in the future in It Chapter 1, where we see Leroy has remained in Derry, lost his son, and is now raising his grandson, Mike Hanlon. That version of Leroy from that first movie has always seemed very different from the Leroy that we are getting in this season of Welcome to Derry. But it would appear that years in Derry will in fact do that to you. It'll make you a darker, colder person. And we are seeing the early stages of that in this scene and experiencing how Leroy changes over the years after his time in Derry. Will even says as much here that it's beginning.
It's got to hear.
Now, my guess is that by the end of the season, Charlotte will have either left and gone back to Louisiana, or she dies at the Black Spot fire, and we will see Leroy remain in Derry alone for the rest of his life, becoming more and more tainted. So over in town, we see more missing kid posters, one featuring Teddy Uris, who we know for sure now is dead, in case it wasn't obvious when it ripped him in two in the pilot. We see wanted posters of Hank being plastered around town, and I get it, I'd be angry too if I thought a guy that killed a bunch of babies was out on the loose, but you're kidding yourself if you don't think that the fact that he is a black man isn't contributing to the vitriolic hatred and assumption of guilt that we are seeing amongst the Derry residents. So we are seeing the townsfolk come together to take the law into their own hands. These goobers have their shotguns in hand, ready to form a violent mob to find Hank, and this honestly reminded me of the redneck brigade of Haddonfield, Illinois that we saw in Halloween 5 when they all banded together to get Michael Myers. I mean, look at this guy. He is walking the street, gun in hand, flask in the other. This is totally going to end well. Not. We also see this red truck several times throughout the episode, and it's of course meant to represent the presence of it and how it is fueling this hatred and fear that has the whole town riled up. And this is all reminiscent of the previous cycle, like I mentioned a second ago, where it was the one who incited the violent Bradley Gang massacre, where the people of Derry came together, guns in hand, and took the law into their own hands. Now up at the kids' clubhouse, we see the kids looking at the spear that Rose had given to Daniel, a piece of its former star cage. Lily tells the others about how it feared the artifact, and we see Lily unwilling to let anyone else hold it.
My precious.
This is showing us two things. She doesn't want to let it go because it protects her from it, but also that she doesn't know who she can trust after it just so perfectly impersonated her once close friend, Maddie. And I could be wrong about this, but I also kind of got the impression that maybe the shard is putting off some kind of like hateful energy. I mean, it did contain it after all, and maybe this shard is what is making Lily more like temperamental and angry. We'll just have to see. So the kids, they begin to fight and turn against each other. Again, I'm wondering if the spear is what's responsible for that. It kind of reminds me of that scene in the first Avengers movie where they all have Loki's scepter in that room and then they all start fighting with each other, and we learn that it's Loki via the scepter, you know, making them argue because he wants to divide them. We could see the exact same thing happening here with the kids. We know that this is something that it does. In chapter 1 with the Losers Club, he did the same thing. And Richie is quick to see this conflict for what it is.
This is what it wants! To turn us against each other.
It is trying to divide them up because together as a united front, they are stronger. And while this episode does show the group divided, it also shows closer bonds built between characters like Rich and Marge, who are falling for each other, as well as Ronnie and Will, who are falling for each other as well. But this leaves poor Lily alone. And as we'll discuss in a second, the one person that she thought she could trust is then revealed to be a fucking loony following them around in a clown costume and wants to feed her friends to the clown. So next we catch up with Howerin, who is still seeing ghosts. Now remember, Howerin has the shine just like Danny from The Shining. And when you have the shine, that gives you the ability to see spirits. And as we hear Dick say a little later in the episode, if you acknowledge the spirits, they will not leave you alone. Now, Dick's grandmother had taught him how to create a lockbox in his mind where he can put the spirits that bother him. And he can essentially lock away the sensitivity of his shine. Not to bring it back to Marvel, but of course that's what I'm gonna do. Think of it kind of like with James McAvoy, who, hey, he's also in it, played Bill. Think of it kind of like James McAvoy's Professor X. We see him in X-Men First Class have to learn how to silence the voices of his, telepathic mind. And that's essentially what Dick Halloran learned to do with his shine ability. But In the previous episode, we saw it enter Dick's mind and break that box open, making Dick once again extremely sensitive to the presence of spirits, and putting him in a constant state of haunting. Now, speaking of the boxes, we know that Dick will eventually regain the ability to contain his shine. I mean, if we're meant to consider The Shining and Dr. Sleep as loose canon to this series and events that will happen in the future. And it is in Dr. Sleep that we learn that after the events of The Shining, Dick teaches Danny how to do this box trick. But he takes it a step further and teaches him how to lock up individual spirits in individual boxes, a new trick that we may see Dick develop later this season as he puts his mind back together. And hey guys, I am so excited to show you this exclusive It parody merch that we designed for our merch store. We have this map of the Derry sewer system featuring Pennywise as Pac-Man, or you could get your official Losers Club membership shirt. There's also this IT department, the Overlook Maze, and this carpet pattern from The Shining, and if you look close, you'll see red rum is hidden in the pattern. We also have this Life of a Dancing Clown Taylor Swift parody shirt and this Derry vintage clown costume. Links for all of those are in the description below, and now you can become a store member to earn rewards and get free stuff. And by the way, we have a Black Friday sale happening on the merch store right now. Shopping our merch store is a great way to support our channel. Thank you so much for that support. Now, back to what I was saying. So Dick arrives at the black spot and we see that he is seeing ghosts that even we as the audience do not see. And at his feet we see water, which had me thinking that he was yet again being taunted by it, since we saw water at Dick's feet in the plane when he met it for the first time, but it was just the icebox leaking. So back with Ronnie and Will, we get this sweet moment that I think is foreshadowing that these two are likely to grow up and get married and be the parents to little Mike Hanlon. But this also makes me sick because we know what happens to Mike Hanlon's parents. So Charlotte rolls up and gets on to Will, and guys, I love Charlotte. I think she's probably my favorite character of this series, only of course second to Dick Halloran. So Charlotte drops Will's middle name,
William Dubois Hanlon.
Now, this is a French name, which isn't a surprise considering Will was born in Shreveport, Louisiana, Cajun country. So it was also in the previous episode that we saw Hank and Ingrid go to Charlotte for help, and now we know that Charlotte has asked the guys at the Black Spot to help hide Hank from the authorities, and that is why Charlotte brought Ronnie with her when she went to get Will so that she can be reunited with her father. Back at the tower, we see Marge treating her eye wound, and Rich says,
I was a Weebelo for a couple years.
This is a Cub Scout ranking where he would have learned things like first aid. So these two lovebirds have their moment, and then Rich throws his paper airplane, hoping to land it on Main Street, making me wonder if that's like foreshadowing that we might see an actual plane from the military base land on Main Street before this series ends. Anyway, the paper plane, it goes into the drain pipe the same way that Georgie's paper boat went into the pipes in the movie. Now, back with Halloran, we see him trying to drown out his heightened senses with alcohol. Halloran tells Hanlon about what happened with it, and we already talked about that a little bit, but I just want to take this opportunity to say that while I know this series is going to be going back 27 years every season, I really hope we see some kind of Overlook Hotel spin-off series. Call it Welcome to the Overlook, and show Dick Halloran like leaving Derry and getting his job at the Overlook Hotel. You could set that up at the end of this season. That would be awesome, because I love the character and this great actor that they have playing him. So good. So I hope they continue that story, and you could tell one hell of a story in a season of television at the Overlook Hotel. I could even see that lasting for a few seasons. There's lots of stuff you could do with that. Now, like I mentioned a second ago, we are seeing it drive the kids apart as a group, isolating Lily. But we're also seeing it drive apart the Hanlons. Hanlon has had it out with Will, Charlotte, and Halloran. And with Hanlon and Lily both being characters that are getting shut out and isolated through the influence of it, it gives me the impression that characters like Lily and Hanlon are who it fears the most. Halloran as well, pretty much with him self-isolating. And we know that these three characters do pose a threat to it. Lily with her possession of the Star Dagger, Halloran with his shine ability, an ability that it thought that only it had, and seemed really caught off guard when he met Howerin for the first time. And then of course there's Hanlon being a man without fear. Now back at school, Lily is once again feeling alone, and we see that despite her having the dagger, it is still able to mess with her, once again taking the form of her pickled father. Now at lunch, we see Richie and Marge continuing to bond, and they both mention how they hear kids' voices in the pipes.
When I brushed my teeth, I thought I heard voices in the pipes. You too?
This is something damn near every kid in Derry has experienced.
I only hear voices in the tub.
So Richie gifts Marge an eye patch, and then come the patty cake shits looking to re-recruit Marge. Patty calls Richie Ricky Ricardo, a reference to I Love Lucy, and I guess a shot at Richie's hair, which, I mean, I love his hair, so, you know, like, you, Patty. And guys, you know, Marge really was like pissing me off earlier in the season, but she has completely won me over, especially when she calls herself a freak, reminiscent of the self-proclaimed losers of the Losers Club. So the kids, they ride their bikes to the black spot with Will to talk to Ronnie and Hank, and we get this line from Richie.
Last time I said a prayer, my dead thing almost killed us.
This is a callback to their encounter at the cemetery with It when Rich pretended that he knew how to conduct a seance. So as they're walking into the black spot, we see Marge give Richie his drumsticks that are usually in his back pocket, but that she was holding for him while he rode his bike. And then once inside, we see Richie kiss his hand and touch it to this photo of singer Sarah Vaughan, showing Richie's appreciation for the very style of music that he would be playing later in the episode. So back over with Lily, we see her riding her bike to see Mrs. Kersh, and this creepy ass neighbor is smiling at her. This is It hiding in plain sight, like in the previous episode where we saw this guard smiling at Charlotte. Now in this scrapbook, we see Mr. and Mrs. Kersh at the Derry Canal Days. This is an annual carnival style event in Derry that we saw in It Chapter 2, and very well could have begun with that first arrival of the circus in 1908, and it's a tradition that has stuck around. So then we get this photo of Bob Gray, her father, in the flesh, and Lily recognizes the familiarity of that face and smile. And we should mention that these photos are very similar to the photos of Bob Gray that we saw in It Chapter 2. So Lily begins to confide in Mrs. Kersh, but then catches a glimpse of a framed photo of the real Pennywise the Clown, and Kersh is very excited to learn that Lily has indeed seen him, seen her father. All the pieces then begin to fall into place, and it becomes clear that Kersh has been running around in her old clown costume, following the kids, hoping to see her father. That was her in this photo, and that was her outside the Hanlon's house. She goes on to explain that the carnival and the circus moved on from Derry, but she stayed behind following the death of her father, saying that he was taken from her. Ingrid tries to use Lily's grief of her own father to convince her to help her, but Lily makes clear that she's not batshit crazy like Mrs. Kersh and understands that her father is dead. Kersh then says,
No one who dies here ever really dies.
And this is the exact same line that she said here in It Chapter 2.
No one who dies here ever really dies.
So you'll also notice that Lily's bag is from the pickle plant that her dad worked at, and now is a good time to mention that all the tragedies that happen in Derry are typically caused by It to cause feelings of pain and fear throughout the town, meaning just like how It killed Bob Gray, the father of Ingrid Kersh, It also killed Lily's father, only Lily sees that and Mrs. Kersh doesn't. So Lily gets the hell out of there and slices Kersh's hand with the star dagger and rides her bike away. And on the street, we see again that same red truck lurking in the background. Now, over at the Falcon Tavern, the Falcon, by the way, being the same name of a bar from the It novel, one that, God, I hope my research is correct on this, but it's a bar that becomes a gay bar and the owner doesn't even know it. Anyway, these yahoos are discussing how to find Hank, and one mentions that he could be hiding in the sewers and that they should go down there and find him, to which I say, yeah, y'all do that. Now back at the black spot, we see Will attempt to talk to Hank about It and how to stop It, and Hank still doesn't seem to grasp the supernatural nature of what's going on, and that's even more ironic because he is dating the woman who thinks that It is her father. Anyway, Hank is instead focused on Will's intentions when it comes to his daughter, and he asks Will the exact same question that I would ask any boy looking to date my daughter.
What's your favorite movie?
And Will gives a great answer, by the way. War of the Worlds, referring to the 1953 classic about Martians attacking Earth, keeping in theme with the alien invasion undertones of this series. So over at the bar, we see Richie and Marge unknowingly get a rum and coke, and dude, I love a rum and coke. Don't give kids rum and Coke. They wanted Coke. Kind of f***ed up that you did that. Anyway, Richie is then asked to step in and play drums, and the night is looking so happy, and then here comes Chief Bowers and his ragtag group of racists there to commit the tragedy that we've all known was coming, the Black Spot Fire. They're all in their Halloween masks because they're to show their face. And this one, he's wearing a Dracula mask. This one is wearing a Frankenstein mask. And here we have a clown. But he isn't the only one getting his clown on. We also see Mrs. Kersh getting into costume as well, all setting the stage for what is sure to be a gnarly next episode. And we'll be breaking it down for you right here, same bat time, same bat channel. So if you're new here, be sure to subscribe, hit the bell so you get notified every time we upload a new video for ScreenCrush. I'm Colton Ogburn.